Okay. Hello, everyone, and hello to all the participants of RootOne. We're very, very excited that you're here with us. If you were in Israel in the last summer and you're thinking about college, or you're in a process of getting into college, this program might be very interesting for you. My name is Nadav Shachmon, and tonight we're going to talk about the future of many, many of you living or life in college as a Jewish student, and how can you talk about Israel with confidence? We're going to meet Jewish students that are on campus right now and live the reality, complicated, challenging reality of being on college. But before that, I'd like to share a little bit of data with you about what's happening right now on some of the campuses and in general. So during the last conflict between Israel and Hamas in May 2021, and this came from Hillel and ADL. Students at college campus across the United States expressed an even sharper increase in anti-Semitic activity, including many incidents not directly connected to Israel. Anti-Semitic incidents peaked during 2020-2021 academic year, reaching an all-time high of 244 incidents, even though many campuses were physically closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I don't really want to know what would have happened if all campuses would have been open. Another interesting piece of information is that research suggested that anti-Semitic activity on campus makes some Jewish students feel unwelcome and least likely among their peers to view their campus as welcoming to religion diversity. An online survey and analytic company, College Plus, noted that about a third of surveys said that they experienced any form of anti-Semitism. And in the last year, 31% of students witnessed anti-Semitic activity on campuses, not directed to them, but in general. But all these, and it goes on and on and on, and all that data indicates that something is happening, and what is happening is not good. And tonight, and this is just a part of the data that exists out there, and tonight we're here to talk about it. We're here to say, okay, even though you guys are thinking about college, you're applying to college, you're on the way to get to college, there's another piece of it, and it's the Jewish piece and it's the Israeli piece. And we're here for you. We're here to give you a few points of advice, a few points of ways to think about it, and maybe to get ready for your next chapter in life. And we're going to meet the people who actually decided to do something about it. Even though it's challenging out there on college campuses, they looked at the challenge and said, okay, we're going to be actively doing something to change the reality around me in a way that will not create even more conflict. And that's very, very interesting. They created an initiative called the Israel Summit. The Israel Summit is a movement conference happening twice a year, but it's almost a movement that was born at Harvard University with the goal of broadening students' horizon on Israel and revising the growing apathy and antipathy towards the country on campus, towards Israel on campus. What I found to be amazing is that whoever started it are college students, students who were on campus and feeling that what's happening, the conversations around Israel, is not amazing to the least, and it's not okay. And they wanted to do something about it. With your permission, I'm going to share a short video that gives a little taste of what is Israel Summit. How does it look like, really? So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see it. Great, you guys see my screen? Just fantastic.
Raz, I'm the co-creator of the Netflix show Fauda. I'm Daniel Lubetsky. I'm the founder and executive chairman of KIND.
My name is Anissim Black. I am a recording artist and a public speaker.
Yael Eckstein, President and CEO of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
My name is Tal Zaks. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Moderna.
I'm excited to be joined by an amazing personality, Noam Barton.
One of Israel's best friends. He served as the 22nd Prime Minister of Canada.
Hello and welcome to the Israel Summit. The Israel Summit is the largest gathering in history of students from around the world coming together to learn about and support the state of Israel. We have students joining us from over 400 universities.
89 different countries.
You're going to hear from TV stars and Paralympic athletes, CEOs and NGOs, pastors and rappers and politicians on both sides of the aisle. The Israel Summit and the global movement that this has become was entirely put together by students.
My name is Jake Shapiro.
My name is Naomi Freilich.
My name is Alexandra Hassan.
I'm Catherine Heron.
My name is Eitan Capuano.
I'm Katrina.
My name is Sophia Braslauer. I'm really so honored to be introducing Barak Regev today, the Managing Director of Google Israel.
I think Israel is a key ingredient for any market that is looking to drive innovation.
I would hope also that this would cause some of the students and others who are viewing this and participating in this to actually go to Israel. Go to Israel and see what a prosperous and progressive country it is.
I think that when people hear the word Israel, it invokes a lot of emotions that aren't necessarily based on reality. I think that's why this Israel Summit is so important, because it's showing a side of Israel that you're not going to find on social media.
I feel that the Israel Summit is important because right now there's major movements, all over the world and specifically on college campuses trying to tell a different narrative and a different story about Israel than what's actually actual, what's factual and what's true.
6 months ago, a group of college kids got together. We never could have possibly imagined that our months of effort would turn the Israel Summit into the largest gathering of students in history.
Video is available on YouTube, and it's fantastic and so well put. A really well done job, and it's just a taste of what you can do on college campus and how you can create a conversation, but bringing people to talk about Israel, and really high-end people in a diverse way that shows a wide range of point of views and attitude that are connected to Israel. And with us today are three panelists, members of the summit. Daryn Golub. Daryn is a junior at the University of Pennsylvania, studying mechanical engineering and design. Daryn is originally from Westchester, New York, and attended the Schechter Westchester School from McKay to 12th grade, and does work for companies around design, which is amazing. So thank you, Daryn, for being with us. We also have Joshua. Joshua is a junior at the joint program between Columbia University and the Jewish Technology Seminary, which is JTS, studying math and computer science at Columbia and Talmud at JTS. Joshua is also serving on the Columbia student government where he has been on the front line standing up against anti-Israel rhetorics. Joshua, thank you for helping putting this event together and being with us. And we have Danika. Danika is a junior at UCLA studying statistics on campus. She is the vice president of Bernice for Israel, an Israeli-American Consul Michelanu Fellow, and has served as sophomore engineer chair at the Hillel Student Board. And we are excited and happy that you are with us as well. So I see also Annie here. So hi, Annie. Without further ado, I'm going to ask the first question to you guys, and I'm going to start with Daryn. Is there a social price you pay for being publicly pro-Israel?
That's a good question. I would say yes and no. So I would say yes because I mean I post a lot on Instagram, social media about Israel and about my involvement with the Israel Summit. And I've seen people unfollow me after I post those things. And I'm sure that there are there are some people who know that I'm pro-Israel and maybe don't want to be friends with me because of it, or maybe judge me because of it. So for example, I am in a club, and it's a pretty small club, and I'm pretty close with all of the members of the club. And I heard that someone in the club had said to someone else, I wasn't in the conversation, but had said what's up with Daryn? Like, she is really pro-Israel. Like, that's and said it in kind of this judgmental way, like, what's her deal? And the person that they said it to kind of defended me and was like, well, what do you mean? Like, nothing's up with her. Like, she just is supportive of Israel. And that was kind of that conversation. But I was kind of taken aback by that. And it was very strange to me and kind of hurtful to me that someone who I considered a good friend and who I think considered themselves to be a good friend was kind of judgmental of me in that way and had, said that about me. But I think the kind of no part of the answer is that although they might have, had some opinion about me because I'm supportive of Israel, I'm still in the club. I still am very involved. I still have Instagram followers. I still have friends, and I do all of the things that I want to do. And I don't let it hold me back from doing the things that I want to do. So if I have to pay the small price of, a couple Instagram followers or a comment made about me, but I get to express myself and advocate for the things that I care about, I think that's, a fair price to pay. I mean, ideally there is no price to pay, but I don't think that it's an end all type social piranha, situation at all.
I feel like, first of all, thank you so much for answering. I feel like a lot of high school students who watch us now can identify that even in their high school, among their peers. So thank you for answering that. Danika, do you ever consider holding back on your Jewish identity when you're on campus?
Not at all. Not at all. If anything, I've felt that my time at UCLA and my college experience has become more of a Jewish Israeli experience. And when I was choosing colleges, I did not at all really consider Jewish life heavily. But I assumed that UCLA would be welcoming, and it definitely is more welcoming than I thought it would be. And it also provides a lot of opportunities to engage with Israel and engage with other Jewish students. And our Hillel does an amazing job of bringing together students for holiday events, for regular relaxed events where you meet other Jewish students. And I've learned a lot about Judaism in general by participating in learning fellowships about love and romance in the context of Jewish thoughts, and answering life's big questions and taking part in Israel learning fellowships with our Israel fellow, who's amazing, and just being able to take advantage of all these opportunities makes me very comfortable expressing my Jewish identity with other Jews, but also with non-Jews. In my statistics major, I meet a lot of non-Jewish people, and I've talked about being Israeli, and they find it very interesting, and that I know so many people on campus because of the Jewish community that we have that's really strong. And I know that if anything happens, I'll have the support to kind of defend myself and just defend us. And yeah.
Thank you, Danika. Thank you. Joshua, this next question is for you. Have you ever found yourself frustrated with the college administration on matters related to Israel? And I know you're also involved with some activity that involved voicing the anti-Israel or fighting against anti-Israel voices on that level. So I'm curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah. So at Columbia, where I go, the dynamics are such that the administration isn't outwardly hostile, or so they don't take an active stance, and it's an uphill battle to explain why what's happening isn't okay. And there is like a joint program between the university and Tel Aviv University that's brand new as of 2 years ago. So the administration does have ties to Israel, but at the same time, they allow this conversation to exist on campus, and to the point where it's troubling and upsetting. And that's usually where heads butt when students speak up within like student council. The issue might come up, and the administration just lets us there, doesn't help us through this, doesn't, like, people say things, especially, and there's nothing about the university having a problem with that, where we're still representatives of student government. And at the same time, there's no recognition of the university that what's being said is representing the university. And by letting it go unanswered, the university is allowing this to be said in the university's name.
Is there a specific incident that comes in your mind when you're thinking about stuff like that?
Yeah. So, for example, last year there was a tuition strike, of which one of the goals was yes and attacking Israel. And students spoke up, pro-Israel students spoke up, and we're told time and time again, oh, they're a small group, it's not representative of the whole. We hear you, we need to ask other people. And time again, when they were asked and people answered, it was the people who cared about it, and specifically it was just these pro-Israel students, and they're told time and time again, oh, you're not representing the whole.
Thank you, Joshua. Danika, how can you find your voice on campus? I mean, with that really complicated and challenging situation, how can you actually speak up? What can you do when you're in college?
I think the easiest part would be to just constantly be involved in a Jewish or Israel related organization. So you kind of know people, you feel comfortable like bringing matters up with those that are around you, and you kind of get a sense of the views that people hold around you and like who you should talk to. And, you know, if you enjoy writing, you can talk to like your campus newspaper. We have the Daily Bruin. I have some friends that write in it, but even if you don't know anyone, you can go there, talk to the people, voice your opinions. And, you know, there have definitely been articles sent out in our daily campus newspaper that haven't been very pro-Israel, and that has frustrated me at times. But then if you come together with like Hillel leadership and like Bruins for Israel leadership and different orgs coming together, and you can like piece together a statement to put out there to your campus for other students to see, that's really amazing. And another aspect I would say is getting involved in the student council on your campus. We have like USAC, which is the undergraduate student council. And if you're very like politically minded or just feel you want to make a change on campus and in student life, and want to be a voice for the Jewish community and for Israel within the student council, to make sure issues get considered and solutions occur that you support, you can definitely take part in the student council.
Thank you. No, it's I think finding your voice is the question I'm getting a lot. Daryn, what makes you feel confident when you talk about Israel?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, I don't always feel confident when I talk about Israel. And I think it took me a long time to realize that that's okay. And you still can talk about Israel even if you don't feel confident. because for a long time when I got to college, I was like, there are so many people who know so much more about this, and I'm gonna not know what to say, and I'm speaking on behalf of, so many people and on such an important issue, and I don't want to mess it up, and it feels like this really big burden. So I was like, I'm just gonna, not touch it, not get involved. But I think if you wait until you feel confident and until you feel like you know everything there is to know, you will never say anything, which is worse. And it took me a while to realize that. But, for example, last year, one of my friends called me up and she said she was talking to someone and they were saying all of this, anti-Israel, all these anti-Israel things. And she, didn't know anything about the issue. So she didn't know what to make of it. She didn't know what they were saying. And she was like, can you explain this to me? And so there were some things where I was like, that's really interesting that they say that. This is what I know about that topic. And this is why, what they said is not exactly true or not the full picture, or this is why it's more nuanced. And I was like super proud of myself that I was able to say those things. But then there were also some points where I was like, honestly, I don't know. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know maybe where they heard that, but I would be interested to learn more. And I think that something important is like when you humanize yourself and when you admit that there are things that you don't know, people are more receptive. Like she was like, oh, wow, okay, so I'll look into that. Or, oh, that's so interesting that you framed, those points that way, as opposed to like, if I had gone into that conversation and been like, bam, 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 like I know everything and this person's wrong and stupid, then, she might have gone on the defensive and, maybe that wouldn't have been as well received because I was like too confident. And so I think people actually kind of appreciate that sometimes. But yeah, I guess I feel confident in the things that I know, which I accept isn't everything.
Thank you. I think a lot of people can relate to that approach. And it's very mature and real, I want to say. How much can you know, right? Really, who's right and who's wrong? So much knowledge out there. And it's hard to find your strength there. Thank you for that. Joshua, this one is for you. What is your existing support system on campus? Sounds like you're dealing with a lot of challenges. What actually is the source of stability and confidence that you have around you?
So for me, that's finding people who will support you where it was hard going through this. Being on council, I'm the only person in a room of like 30 people who believe the way I do. And it feels very alienating. So being able to talk to other pro-Israel students outside of council meetings about what's going on, commiserate with me is really helpful. That's professionals at Hillel help me. And yeah, it's just finding the community and knowing that you're not alone. That's the biggest thing that's helped me.
And
reaching out to other people.
When you start college, okay, let's say you graduate and this is like the year you begin. How do you do it? I mean, what is the first steps to create a support system? It sounds almost maybe intimidating in that sense that you're all alone. Maybe you have a friend or two, but you need like a base or a support system. How would you begin to create that? On your opinion,
So my college is different. It's a large Jewish community, so there are a lot of people who I can commiserate with, and other pro-Israel students on campus too. One way is definitely being involved with Israel organizations on campus. So you're in the loop, you know what's going on, and when stuff happens, you have people to reach out to for support. And sometimes there'll be events about Israel on campus that I recommend going to, and just doing what you can. It's there, it exists, and if not, then make it, because other people think similarly like to you and would love to have it just as much as you would.
Fair enough.
I would love to add to that a little bit. I completely agree with Joshua. And something that popped in my mind now as well is like reach out, maybe like if you have an Israel studies department, or to an Israeli professor or someone who is, more on the academic scale, higher up there, knows a lot and has some like power on campus, and you can also learn from them, express your opinions, talk to them, see what kind of material they share with their students, take one of their classes. Like I know like UCLA has an Israel Studies Center, and through the international department, like studies department, there's also like a Middle East development center where you can take part in research with that, and being able to like really use the resources on your campus, like through the orgs, through students, but also through departments and professors. That's a really powerful thing too.
Thank you. And while you're talking, I'm just gonna address another question to you. I mean, how do you respond when you see, read, come across a biased opinion about Israel? I mean, okay, it's in front of you. You realize it's like, it's not great to the least. What do you do when it's in front of you? When someone posted, or someone said a comment you heard, what is there to do on ground?
Yeah, so kind of similar to what Daryn was saying earlier, where, the same way we don't know everything, another person doesn't know everything. And at the same time, that person might not even take part in these conversations on a daily basis. And so they might hear the more outspoken perspective on the issue. And they might post something that isn't accurate, and we know that it's not accurate, but they don't really know that. And so sometimes I'll be frustrated, but I'll also kind of like, in a way, like not acknowledge it because it's just something someone said. But at the same time, if that kind of perspective is held by a lot of people, which it tends to be, at least at some college campuses and in the broader society, we obviously have to do something about it. And so I talk to my parents. I like talking to the Israel Fellow on campus and other students, taking part in larger conversations, going online, reading articles, learning a little bit about the history.
Thank you. Daryn, how do you deal with the polarizing conversation around Israel, which getting worse and worse from what we hear? It's either you're against or you're not, or it's good or bad. There's nothing in the middle. We all know that Israel is a complicated place with love, but we also understand the complexities in it. How do you deal when the world around you show only polarizing sides, only good and bad?
Yeah, I think that there's kind of two points to hit. So the first, I think, is kind of like what Danika was getting at a little bit, of like picking your battles sometimes. So knowing, when is something coming from someone who you're not going to change their opinion, or they're trying to be just antagonistic, and it's not really worth engaging with them or worth responding because it's just going to take up your energy and going to make you upset, versus when is it, an opinion that might be held or something you heard from someone who doesn't know a lot, so you actually can educate them, or it's something coming from the school, like what Josh touched on, where it actually is fruitful to fight those things. So I think the first step is deciding, whether or not it's worth it to get involved, because sometimes it's just not. And I think then, if it is something that you do want to get involved with or respond to, I think you kind of hit an important point of like it being very polarized. And so something that I kind of try to do is, remember that this is a very nuanced issue, and if there was one right answer, like none of us would still be having these conversations, because this would have been solved so long ago if it was that easy. So I think it's like important to remember that this is so nuanced, and there are so many different, answers and perspectives. And that can be a difficult thing to try and get across to someone. But I think it is an important thing. And kind of going back to like the confident and like what you do know about the issue, like being able to speak about what you know, and put your perspective or your knowledge, adding that to the conversation, even if you're, I think that we don't need to expect ourselves to solve this, or expect to like completely diffuse anti-Israel sentiment on campus, but any little bit of information that we can add, or something that we can teach someone about Israel that they didn't already know, I think any of those little things are helpful towards the ultimate goal.
That's great. Joshua, how can you prepare yourself to deal with the conflict without becoming a target? How can you do this?
Without becoming a target. Honestly, let's see. Target. I mean,
that's tough. I mean,
yeah,
it helps. It's out there. It could be that
it's gonna happen. Like, you can't really not make yourself a target sometimes. Like, sometimes, like, just because like you speak up, you'll get targeted. But like, that happens all the time anyway. As soon as you speak up, someone doesn't like what you're saying, they'll like complain about it. But like, doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop. That you should stop speaking up about Israel. That in fact is the opposite. It's because someone challenges you that should make you stand up stronger and more confident than before. You don't have to know everything about Israel, as was mentioned before, but you should. Doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about Israel. Sometimes, like walking around, you like you like stuff can be written sometimes on a hill. Things might be written sometimes. Sometimes on social media, people post things, and that quote unquote you're targeted in that case. But that's just because of the nature of what's happening. Doesn't mean that you should shut up.
Thank you.
Add to that, just quickly, I think that also sometimes like using that like support system or that like network of people. So if you are worried about something, like you don't want to be the one to say it, like if you have a petition or you have a whole group of students that are going and advocating for something, that like that might be a way that you can maybe take some of the pressure off of yourself if that's like something that is scary.
Yeah, you're not fighting this alone. Like, you're doing it with other people. The key is making sure you're doing it with other people, and it helps a lot.
Right, support system. That's so important when you come to anywhere, new place, new job, a new college, right? You want to have your support system and making sure that you're not alone. Great. Well, I'm going to focus a little bit about what you guys are doing, the Israel Summit, and which I found to be incredible. And I'm going to ask you a little bit about this incredible initiative, and with the hope that that we can learn a little bit about it, maybe get a little inspired by it. So Joshua, please share with us, why did you choose this to get involved with the Israel Summit?
So last year is when things were challenging on council. And I know Aiden from high school, Daryn too. And it was something I saw on social media that was very interesting to me, because that was partially like my support system, like knowing that like this, like what happens on my campus isn't just unique to my campus, but it happens on all campuses. No matter where you go, it's going to happen. The question is, what are you going to do about it? That's all anyone can ever do. Mm-hmm. And I measured him, and he asked me if I was interested, and that's how I got involved. Like, anyone can just ask, you want to get involved, just speak up. And yeah, we would love your support, love your help. Every person counts to make a change.
And it doesn't matter what college you are, you can just get involved, easy. Just reach out, send a message. Okay, so when you go and get involved, maybe it'll be interesting me to hear and everyone to hear a little bit about what you do. Danika, tell us a little bit about what it means to be involved at the Israel Summit. What do you guys do? Do you create teams? Who's recruiting the people? How does that really feel like?
Yeah, great question. So last year I started as a campus manager, and of course everything was virtual. So my focus was on assisting with marketing. I would put logos on the flyers that were pre-made by the marketing team on the Israel Summit, which made my life easier, greatly appreciated. And yeah, I would send it out to Hillel, to the Michelanu Fellow at the time, for them to advertise it. And I would post on my Facebook and everything. So that was me as a campus manager. And then Aiden sent out this like Google form about like involvements for the upcoming year. And I mentioned that I would love to be a part of the central team, which Daryn, Joshua, and I are all part of the central team this year. And Joshua and I specifically were on the outreach team. So we were emailing a lot of organizations over the summer, talking to them, hopping on Zooms, talking about what the Israel Summit does, how they can support us. And yeah, that was very fun. And then when the quarter started and we were actually in school, UCLA is on the quarter system, we started marketing and watched the Israel Summit together. So yeah.
Amazing. And is there anyone who's involved in recruiting the speakers? How do you decide who's going to speak? Because what I love about the Israel Summit is the wide range of speakers. You get, people from arts and people from politics, and it's really like left and right and economy and everything. How do you guys decide who's coming to the summit?
That's another great question. I feel like maybe Daryn or Joshua can answer that better. So pass.
Yeah, I can take that one. So that's a really good question. And that is something that we really try to do, is have a wide range of speakers and different narratives. So something that we do is at like the beginning of the year, the beginning of the planning process, is we get together and we're like, okay, what are topics that would be interesting for us to cover, or stories that are important for us to share, people that, we have like a dream wish list of people that we would love to hear from. And then it's just about like reaching out and to as many people as possible and doing a lot of research about, who are people that we think would be interested in coming to this kind of event, or who are people that actually might not be it might not be their first instinct, but they would be open to it. And it's really interesting for them to come and speak with us. So it's just a lot of kind of like fitting that puzzle together of who do we want and who's available. And then how can we have a program that's like really robust and diverse in the voices that we get.
Wow, it's incredible. And so, it could be any one of you, but the question is that I have, and maybe a lot of people that watch it, is so what's the goal of the summit? Because it looks amazing. When you look at the videos you do, when you look at the programs you make, it's amazing. Top-notch speakers, reaches us so many people around the world and in the United States particularly. What's the goal of it? To create a conversation, to bring Israel on campus, to show Israel in a different light?
Yeah, I think it's all of those. And to me, what's really cool about the Israel Summit is that it's not political. Like, it's not meant to be a political thing. We don't talk politics. We talk about arts and culture and sports and business and technology and all of these things that are so amazing about Israel and so beautiful about Israel, and things that like 99% of the time get left out of the conversation when people talk about Israel, because like the first thing that your mind goes to, the first thing the conversation goes to is politics and like conflict. And there's so much more to Israel than that. And like, I think for me, the goal is about humanizing Israel and about educating people and helping people realize that like Israel is such a robust place. It's like a real place with real people, and it has so many awesome things about it. And it's not just this like polarizing issue, but there's so much more there. And I think in doing so, we build advocates for Israel and we build connections to Israel, so that hopefully the next time someone is faced with that political conversation, they feel connected and they feel like, hey, I kind of want to stand up for this place because it is really cool and I learned all these awesome things about it.
Amazing. Anything interesting else you would want to share about the summit? I think that's like a good place, your goals, personal goals, or maybe give us a little taste of what's going to happen in the spring. I know it's twice a year, so you guys already know. Do you have any idea of how it's going to look like?
I mean, it's gonna look the same. We're still gonna have amazing speakers, informative sessions, thought-provoking topics, and but I would say another reason to like be involved in Israel Summit is that it's a great way to take charge of what's going on campus regarding Israel and make the change you want to see, where instead of just having the conversation about Israel stay at where it is on your campus, you have the opportunity to put in an effort and change it the way you want to see it and make a change for the positive, for the better. And that's really what it is.
Amazing.
Yeah,
just
just to add to that, I think to your question of like, how do you kind of find your voice and how do you get involved? I think the Israel Summit is a really good way to open that door and get involved and try and find your voice and put your voice out there. Before I joined the Israel Summit, I was not involved in any sort of like Israel advocacy, other than like Hillel, but that I wasn't really like doing advocacy. So I have found the Israel Summit as my way of being able to, voice that advocacy and, show my peers and my community, like this is something that I really care about. So I think that it's a really good way for that as well.
Yeah. And I think another aspect of the summit to touch on would be the career and special opportunities fair that we have, which is an amazing way for students to learn more. Like this year, I spent some time on Zoom talking to representatives from Tel Aviv University and the University of Haifa and something else over there. And it was so nice. I learned about so many things. They had this like really cool slideshow with different like programs and everything that I hadn't even known about. So that's really nice aspect. That's like day 2 of the summit. So yeah, really great.
Wow, incredible. I'm going to ask if there are any questions from our audience here. I'm gonna give you guys an opportunity to think of a question or ask a question. You can type on the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask. And I'm going to ask you one last question with your permission until they think if they want to join. If you could give one piece of advice to a Jewish teenager who is on high school right now and thinking about college, and sometimes concerned about what's going on or how things will be, you need to give them one piece of advice. Thinking of everything you guys are doing, what will be that advice?
You can go, it's fine. Okay. I would say stay strong. That if it happens, it happens. And that's just the way life works. Sometimes things just happen that you don't want. Doesn't mean you should actively look for something that you don't want to happen. But when it happens, it can be very challenging and troubling and emotionally difficult to deal with too sometimes, depending on how strongly invested, what exactly is going on. But regardless, just like stay strong. That like, don't let it beat you. You got this.
Wow, that's great. Thanks, Joshua. Danika, Daryn, any piece of Torah?
I would say be mindful and selective with your words. Like I have friends in our like social circles in Hillel and Jewish life and everything who are very quick to speak up and very quick to voice their opinion. And I tend to be someone who is very choosy about what I say and like the magnitude of the situation and whether that requires my voice or not and whether my voice will change anything. And so, you know, if we want to like say that something is anti-Semitic, like before we jump to that conclusion, like let's have a talk about it. Do we want to release a statement about this? Is it worth it? Should we voice our opinion for something worse than this? Should we save our voice and it's something, you know, like be decisive and be mindful, like you like raise your voice, but also choose when to do so. And, you know, you don't want to annoy people. You don't want things to be too much. So just keep calm, stay strong, be mindful. Yeah.
That's a good one. Thank you.
I think that I would say to remember that you're not alone, and even when it feels like really daunting, and if you feel like you don't know what to say or you don't know what to do or you don't know how to get involved, there are so many people who would love to help and would love to answer your questions and support you. Even if you go to end up at a school that has a very small Jewish community or a very small pro-Israel community, you know, the Israel Summit is like between schools, so we're all over the world, and so all of us are like a network that you can reach out to, even if you end up not involved in the Israel Summit and you just want to message one of us and be like, hey, this is something that's happening. You know, we're all here to support you, and I know like the people at your school, there are plenty of people there to support you. So I think that that's important to remember, because sometimes it can really feel like it's us against the world, and that's not always the case.
Wow. I mean, thank you for this answer. I know it's like I caught you off guard with that last one, but you did well. Really, thank you for sharing your personal story and your personal experience with us. And it was a pleasure learning about what you guys are doing. And you're not only a source of inspiration, you're also making a change. You're repairing the world, tikkun olam. And I wish for all of you to continue to be successful and share a lot of what you know and learn with your peers and also with us. So toda rabba, Danika, Joshua, and Daryn. Thank you so much for preparing for this program and also for being here on a Sunday and sharing your thoughts, views, and wisdom with us. And of course, I again invite everyone to the Israel Summit on, it's going to be in April, right? Joshua, correct me. When is the next one? You're mute.
I don't know if there's a date off the top of my head.
So it's coming up. So stay tuned. It's going to come up. Google Israel Summit. Google Israel Summit, and you'll find details about the amazing program. And toda rabba rabba rabba. Enjoy the winter, and hope to see you all in our next program.
Thank you so much. I just want to say I'm in high school right now, but hearing you guys talk about Israel and how, you know, Jewish life is on campus for you, it makes me feel a lot better about entering college as a Jew. And I live in LA, so it's very liberal here, and my school is very liberal, and most people are pro-Palestine, and even like Jewish people that I know, my friends, like they're very anti-Israel. So it's great to hear that there are programs out there to support us, and that, you know, you're not alone. And I just want to say thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Annie, for being here. Appreciate it. And of course, we're going to send this over to our RootOne participants to hopefully be able to hear this and to learn about you guys and what you're doing and about Israel Summit. As להתראות, shalom.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful winter.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.